What's up, Whisper Nation? Before we get you into this video, I have to preface it. We had Ryan from Clubfantasyffl on. He's great guest. We had a great conversation. He gives you some buy lows, some sell highs. We go through some keep trade cuts as well. Unfortunately, we got to the end of the entire recording, and when I went to edit, I realized that my audio was not picked up for the entire show. So instead of not releasing the entire thing and keeping that content from you, I just edited out my parts of it. So if it jumps around in the video, I do apologize, but I hope you find this content worth your while. All right, let's get you to that video.
Right here.
What's up, Whisper Nation, and welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Whispers. I am Big Travy, and today we are joined by a very special guest, our guy, our pal, Ryan Weisse, over from Clubfantasyffl. Ryan, you can find him over on Twitter at @thefantasy5. He writes for the Fantasy Footballers. He's the co-host of Clubfantasyffl, as I mentioned. He's also an analyst for Fantasy Go NFL. Ryan, how you doing, man?
So far, so good. The season's been pretty kind to me so far. So as long as I can keep grinding along, we're about a third of the way through. Let's keep rocking it. So,
yeah, a lot of people complaining about how brutal it's been to them. But I honestly have been encouraged by how much strategy has had to be played this year, a little bit more than usual, you know, COVID pivots and injuries and whatnot. So it's good to hear it's not beaten up on just everybody. Johnny is also on the mic with me, as always, my partner, Johnny Gametime Hicks. You can find him on Twitter at Johnny_Gametime. I am Big Travy. You can find me on Twitter at Big Travy TFW. So today we're going to have some fun. We're going to do some keep trade cut. We're also going to do some buy low, sell high guys for you. If you're new to our channel, please hit the like and subscribe button. It helps us grow the channel and keep putting out content every single day. We would appreciate that immensely. So without further ado, we'll get on with the keep trade cut. You guys know the rules here. I'm going to give you 3 players, and they're all ranked around the same spots. We're going to do a QB round, a running back round, and a wide receiver round. And you're going to have to keep one, trade one, cut one in this hypothetical situation. Ryan, I'll start with you, and we'll start with the quarterback position. We're going to go with QB9 Deshaun Watson, QB10 Jared Goff, QB11 Lamar Jackson. Obviously, some of these guys more talented than the others, but the fantasy points have put them all kind of together here. Why don't you give Whisper Nation your keep trade cut for these guys?
yeah, I got to say, I thought I was the rest of this was going to be easy after hitting quarterback, but it gets much harder later on. For me, especially when you're playing this game, but just in general, I'm looking to move guys with the most value. And right now, while he's clearly the most talented, Lamar Jackson is not the most valuable right now because people are down on him. So he's my keep. He's a guy who his value's at rock bottom. And that's not when you're going to trade somebody, but he's not looking like a great passer, but is still the QB11 on the season. As long as he has legs, it's not going to be a problem for him in fantasy football. So I'm going to trade Deshaun Watson. I feel like he's high on the hype train right now, especially first week post Bill O'Brien. He has a QB6 finish. As you mentioned, he's QB9 on the season, and he hasn't done much rushing. So there's a huge rushing upside for the rest of the season. If Lamar had more value, I would love to trade Lamar and keep Watson, but in this hypothetical situation, I'm probably going to get more back for Watson than I am Lamar Jackson, and that's just the sad truth of it. And of course, that brings me to cutting Jared Goff, but that did not bother me whatsoever. His numbers are inflated by 2 rushing touchdowns right now. That's usually what he gets for an entire season. So for him to get it in the first third of this season, it's really messing up his future projections and his pace. If you take those 2 touchdowns away, he's the QB20 and he's not even in this discussion. So he's a guy who I have no issue. I don't think I have him rostered anywhere, and he's not rostered in a ton of leagues. And I'm not telling people they need to run out and grab him.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those guys that gets masked maybe by his, offensive core, by his head coach a lot more than these other guys. It's funny, though, that his rushing touchdowns would put him in the company of the other 2 rushing running backs or quarterbacks here, not to call them running backs.
The one thing I noted was Jared Goff, while he may be QB10, he's disappointed in 2 of his 5 games already, and he happened to be my stream of the week for Club Fantasy in both of those weeks. So I'm probably holding a bit of a grudge on him there too. But but you don't want to get let down that much by a guy where I'm talking like below 10 points. It just wasn't very pretty.
And even though he's got the rushing touchdowns, he does not have the rushing floor of these other guys that, you hope to see that keeps you in those weeks. Like you said, when he disappoints, he's a statue. He's going to disappoint you heavily because it's just going to be a bad day. He's not going to give you a floor. So the floor is non-existent.
One thing that Johnny said that I really enjoyed, though, is sometimes the biggest part of a trade, and I understand this is a hypothetical game we're playing, but there might be someone out there with Deshaun Watson who's looking to move him, or with Lamar Jackson who's looking to move him. One of the biggest parts of a trade is you might have to finesse that other owner. Open the lines of communication. Don't just send a trade over. If you might have to sell this trade. And bringing up the playoffs, not everybody is in the fantasy industry. Not everybody's watching a YouTube video on a Friday night with three guys who know what they're talking about. You might need to explain to them why they need this trade. And once they start to see something like that, you're going to come out as the winner, but they're going to feel like they're coming out as the winner.
I love the double down on Johnny's take about putting emotion in here. Remember, the negotiation, it's not only about the hard, cold numbers. It's about that opponent that you're trying to trade with, knowing your league and knowing who you're talking to. Moving on to the running back round, we're going to start with running back 12, Jonathan Taylor. Running back 14, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And running back 14, Miles Sanders. And I was going to jump in and start this one, but I'm not going to do it because it's a little tough for me. What a world we would be cutting Miles Sanders. And obviously a hypothetical. Ryan, let me get your take on this. You don't have to go too far into some of these guys. I know we're going to talk about them later in buy low, sell high, but just a quick take on what you're thinking with these guys.
And that's what I was going to throw out was I filled in my buy low, sell high before I went and looked at who were on the keep, trade, and cut list. I was like, oh, goodness. And just saying the word cut next to any of these running backs. So Johnny hit it on the head. I'm going to be first just quickly up front. My original was cut Jonathan Taylor, which was just disgusting for me to say. Trade Miles Sanders because I feel like what he's done these last couple weeks, he's going to bring the most value, and then keep C.E.H. because he's tied to that Kansas City offense. He's catching the ball and he's likely to find the end zone more. This Le'Veon Bell stuff has me terrified. If I was making this decision right now, I'd cut C.E.H., keep Taylor, still trade Sanders. So
we live in that world of speculation, and that's where we're at right now. Quick note on the Le'Veon Bell thing. I did see today that the Chicago Bears were the best odds to land Le'Veon Bell, but we will see how that pans out.
I was looking at it right before we got on, and I'm talking like 956, and it's skewing heavily towards KC right now.
Yeah, Johnny has definitely been on the KC train too, so just keep your ears and noses peeled. Obviously, when we record this, who knows, he might have already been signed. Or when we release this. In the wide receiver round, we're going to start with you, Ryan. We've got wide receiver 6, Mike Evans. Obviously, Chris Godwin due back. Wide receiver 7 is OBJ in a very high efficient but not high volume offense passing attack. And then we've got Tyler Lockett, who looks to be the odd man out, but is, catching balls from Russell Wilson. So how are you going to break this one down? Keep, trade, cut, Mike Evans, OBJ, Tyler Lockett.
This one was pretty easy for me as well. I've been down on OBJ, not so much on OBJ. I love him as a player. This system is not great for wide receivers. While Stefanski was in Minnesota last year, no wide receiver averaged more than 6 targets of a game. OBJ is here on the back of one really, really good game. So he was my cut. I'm just not sold, and I don't want to be sold. Evans is my trade because TDs are making up for, he's been decent, but we all know about the short yardage games with inflated TDs, and he's doing this all in the absence of Godwin. And I think Godwin's going to step in and be really good and bring life back to that. And you got to move him now in this game and in real life. I'm actively looking to trade Mike Evans anywhere I might have him at this point, just because I don't see it continuing for the rest of the season. And Lockett has actually been an actual buy for me. The Fantasy Footballers put together this really cool day trader article, and he was my buy that's coming out tomorrow for that as well. So he's a guy who I definitely want to keep. Everybody's deflated right now. He's had 2 down games, and a lot of that is going to be because of DK Metcalf having these good games. I was actually digging into this before the season. They split good games and down games straight down the middle last year. They're going to do it again this year. But the thing is, his good games are week winning good games. So he's a guy I want on my team.
Yeah, I think just having a piece, either DK or Tyler Lockett, is good at
100,
this point.
yeah.
And I was screaming and banging the drum for drafting Tyler Lockett before DK. I was maybe wrong in that, but I think they're going to be more even, like you said, than not in most weeks. And if Russ is going to continue to be the only quarterback to throw 3 straight years of 30 touchdowns, making it 4 this year, you're going to want both wide receivers in that offense. I do just want to throw in on, sorry, Ryan, on OBJ. I know you mentioned the Stefanski stat. I think that's a great one as well. No receiver averaging more than 6 targets. OBJ has not had less than 6 targets in a game this year. He has been getting the volume. He's a 30% target market share. So I would just say with Landry banged up, and if you're trying to finesse, you believe, like Ryan, and much smarter people than I, that OBJ cannot sustain it in this offense, and you want to finesse the person coming to you, maybe talk about the target market share that OBJ is seeing and how you can try and sell them on that, because not a lot of wide receivers in the league are seeing 30% of their team's target market share.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to touch on with Evans is in the PPR rankings, I think he's wide receiver 12. I think that's how we did this for this game. But he has fewer yards than every other wide receiver in the top 20. And I think that's a big concern for him right now. So a goal line back is a great way of putting it for him.
Especially with Godwin due back, I just feel like the floor is about to really be non-existent for Mike Evans. All right, so we are now into the meat and potatoes of the show. Buy low, sell high. This is probably what we get 90% of our questions on Instagram and Twitter, just about who do I sell, who do I buy, how do I trade. So we wanted to give Whisper Nation an opportunity here to hear from the wise man, Ryan over there, and hear a little bit about what he's got. And he's going to have 2 guys. Johnny's going to come in with a guy of his own, and we'll talk a little back and forth with this. But we're going to start with the wide receivers here, and we're going to start with the buy low. And why don't you give us your first buy low here, Ryan? Because I think it's a popular one, and I got a couple things I want to talk about with that wide receiver core.
Yeah, perfect. DJ Moore is a buy low for me right now. Everybody's making a big deal about the lack of touchdowns. That's not a part of his game. He's not been a touchdown scorer, and we've seen him produce. His catch rate is down 5%, and that's mildly concerning, but he's seeing high volume, seeing great air yards. He just needs to convert more. Just increasing his 5% back up to the catch rate, that's going to give him 5 more fantasy points. That's instantly going to move him up to wide receiver 20, and he still only has 1 touchdown in that projection, to where I think he had 6 last year. If he starts to pick up and even just catch that pace, and I'm not even saying score 6 this year, but score 3 or 4 more this year, he's probably still a top 20 wide receiver for you. It's a very effective offense. It's going to get more effective when they get Christian McCaffrey back, and it's going to open things up for more. I think this is an excellent opportunity to buy a guy who a lot of people had top 10. I would have called him more top 15 heading into the season. But I'm not scared of the lack of touchdowns. That's been a part of his game. And he, like I said, he proved last year he can accomplish good things without scoring those TDs.
Yeah, and I would just say, he's got room to get better in the touchdown department than he was last year, because they are actually using DJ Moore as the downfield threat than they are with Robbie Anderson, which is kind of strange. So the knock on DJ has been that Robbie Anderson is maybe the 1A in this offense. Well, Ryan, I don't know if you agree. Johnny, I don't know if you agree, but I don't really care, because this offense is going to be throwing a lot. They're going to be throwing so much.
They can't stop anybody.
Both of them. Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, it started with Evans and Godwin last year, where people were fighting about it. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. They're both top 3 wide receivers, not 5, not 10, top 3 before they got hurt.
Yeah, and I would say the top half of teams that give up points to wide receiver usually average around 30 points to the position that they give up, which means you're talking about splitting 30 points between 2 guys. I think you're going to take that from your wide receiver position. So I think the points are there to be had. Ryan, your second guy, we talked a little bit at the top, is Tyler Lockett. Speaking a little bit of that, did you want to hammer home any points on Tyler Lockett here?
Just the main thing is you actually have a enormous buy low window on him right now because of the fact that they are on bye. He's coming off of 2 very bad games, but as I brought up, that's a part of what's going to happen in this offense, and he's going to have bad games. But if you're looking at him now as more of a wide receiver 2 instead of your team's wide receiver 1, you're going to be able to sustain those bad games. And there's probably a manager out there right now who has him on a bye week who needs a fill-in. And we're going to bring up some guys later on that you're going to be able to sell. And I think there are guys who should be considered wide receiver 3s and wide receiver 4s that you might be able to flip straight up for Tyler Lockett. Your window is it's a good window right now, but you want to try to pull that off before Sunday because there might be a desperate manager and you need to pounce on that.
I love the strategy there, Ryan. I think that's huge. Make sure you're looking at who has buys, not just for the Tyler Lockett acquisition, but also other buys that are happening now that are going on. Johnny, I'm going to let you round out the wide receiver buy low category with a guy that's playing wide receiver out there, Marquise Brown.
And just to add to Johnny's point, when you're dealing with boom or bust wide receivers, your goal is to obviously miss their bust games. And if you're trading for Marquise now, you've already missed a bunch of his. So now when you get the boom, you're actually winning this majorly because he is a boom or a bust guy, but he's getting those busts out of the way for you right now.
Yeah, and I actually think, you guys both brought up, boom or bust. Johnny, you brought up the targets. He's actually seen his most targets the last 2 weeks as this offense continues to get going and continues to kind of meld together. 8 targets against Washington, then 10 against Cincinnati. But I think the biggest point is Baltimore just has been in positive game scripts in most of their games. You take out the Kansas City game, and they've boat raced pretty much everyone, meaning they haven't really needed Marquise Brown. Check out how the schedule actually tightens. And you've got at Philly, obviously, then the bye. Pittsburgh, Indy, New England, Tennessee, Pittsburgh. Those are obviously some tough defenses, but in games that are competitive, you're going to want to get the ball in your playmakers' hands. And I think they will lean on Marquise Brown in those games, along with Mark Andrews. And we could actually see the whole offense start to get a little bit, more competitive and not just have to take plays off down the stretch here.
You bring up a great point with the double game with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh does so well at stopping the run. They're going to need to lean on the pass, and that's where a guy like Hollywood's going to shine.
Yeah, they've been definitely a pass funnel defense. All right, so we're moving on to our sell high. This is what you can kind of use maybe to get those players we just talked about, or maybe running back depth or whatever you need. We're going to stick with the wide receivers here. And your first one is the hottest waiver wire ad after last week, and that's Chase Claypool, Ryan.
And I'll tell you, any league where I landed him, I'm looking to move him at this point because he scored 42 points last week out of 70 at 70 total in his PPR scoring right now. Literally 42 out of 70 in 1 week. He can be good in this offense. Yeah. Oh, completely sustainable. I mean, he can be a good wide receiver in this offense. And I'm actually, just to be honest, excited for him in this offense, but his value will never be higher than what it is right now. You have guys, especially if you play on like Sleeper, where it shows you who missed the claim, go after those guys right now because they wanted him. And yeah, that's a big thing I do every week. If I land a guy, is I go see who I outbid, and I'll sometimes just send an offer right back out. And the 3 guys that we've mentioned, DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, Hollywood Brown, I'd rather have any single one of them than Claypool in season long. Dynasty is a little bit of a different story, but we're not worried about that. Claypool can't. Yeah, I say he just can't keep doing this.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. And even if Claypool, here's the thing. Pittsburgh can't put the genie back in the bottle. You're not going to be able to do that with Claypool anymore, right? We know that he's good. We know you want to use him. We know Ben likes him. But the problem is they've got great wide receivers over there. They've got Juju. Deontay Johnson was commanding double-digit targets when he's been on the field for the entire game. And I just don't know if we're going to ever know week to week who the number one for that week will be. And so that might be a situation we hit here, and that just caps all sorts of upside.
Well, another big thing we hit on was, because we were talking about this on our show as well, that they used him a lot like a tight end, and the Eagles are atrocious against tight ends. So now you have the Browns, who are also bad against tight ends. So he might end up with another big week this week, but it's not going to be 42 points big. A lot of his success may not have had a lot to do with him being a wide receiver, it's just being a huge wide receiver.
So your next one, Ryan, I love this one too, but I love Darius Slayton. I hate his situation. And so I guess that's probably why you're selling high on him in this instance.
Yeah, I'm still a huge advocate for Darius Slayton. I love him as a football player. For fantasy, if you remember all the heartbreak you've ever had with Amari Cooper until this year, if you remember the tragedy that was owning Brandon Cooks while he was with the Saints and to a lesser extent with the Patriots and Rams, the roller coaster ride of I'm going to bench this guy because he hasn't done anything. Oh my goodness, he just scored 30 points. I'm going to start him for the next 2 weeks. He's not going to do anything. Then you're going to bench him, and then he's going to blow up. And now you're stuck in this ugly cycle for the rest of the season. That's Darius Slayton in this offense. I love the guy. He's a great football player, but he is the definition of boom or bust in the NFL right now, and you have to sell those guys after their big games. And Slayton is a guy that if I have him, I'm ready to move him just because there's going to be 2 bust games where I'm just going to be disappointed.
Yeah, makes total sense. And I think what we might see is similar to the Claypool situation. Slayton's target market share might swing back and forth between him and Evan Ingram. And we've already seen
Sterling Shepard comes back this week. So.
Yeah, exactly. So we've seen those split when they're on the field and off the field together. And I think that could be a situation. All right, so we're moving on to those running backs, and we are going to try and buy low now. And we just talked about C.E.H. at the top of the show, Ryan, but you think you can buy low on him, even though I still think a lot of people value him.
Yeah. Let me preface that this was recorded before we knew anything about Lev Bell, so we're not quite sure there. And I don't disagree. You might, when I say buy low, it's all relative, but you're not paying a 5th overall pick for him or whatever the guy who drafted him did. My first note for C.E.H. and my later guy are that people are dumb and that you can't hate a player because of your expectations were too high for that player. He should have never been the RB5. Let's be absolutely clear here. But he's the RB12 right now, and he's averaging almost 20 touches a game. That's the kind of volume you die for in fantasy football. So I'm not backing off. The TDs are going to come, and you're going to be happy you have him. Kansas City does not play in great weather. There's going to be a lot more opportunity for him to score touchdowns. And of course, you want a piece of that offense. You're not getting Tyreek Hill off of anybody. You're certainly not getting Travis Kelce or Patrick Mahomes off of anybody. C.E.H. is that piece you're going to be able to buy. And I'm not saying you're not going to have to pay something for him. It's going to be something. It's probably going to feel substantial, but it's going to pay off for you, assuming asterisk Le'Veon Bell does not sign there.
Yep, that's 100%. And I love what you guys have kind of done here and laid out guys that we would want to buy. Marquise Brown, Tyler Lockett, DJ Moore, C.E.H., all part of voluminous offenses that are going to be good for fantasy football. So I love the take there of talking about, look, if you're not going to be able to get the big heavy hitters on that offense, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, because you're going to have to buy for too high, get C.E.H., whose value is a little bit lower now. And even lower is Mecole Hardman, who I think you could go and buy right now as somebody who has some...
Probably still a waiver claim if your waivers are running late. Probably not by the time you hear this show, but you may have gotten him on waivers. So.
Yep, and I think he's a buy low too. So don't be afraid to buy there. This one is music to my ears because I am heavily invested in Jonathan Taylor across so many leagues, but you've got him as a huge buy low here. You just don't see a way that he's going to bust. I don't think he's busted, and I don't think in any way he has, but I think that people are panicking about his usage so far, up and down with the pass catching and all that.
And if you're in a league with those people, please go get him. Yeah. They're clearly saving him for the second half of the fantasy season, not the fantasy, but the real football season, but we'll call it the fantasy season. And he is still the RB13, and that's probably 7 spots higher than where you drafted him a month ago. He's the opposite of a bust. He's already outplaying his ADP. He's not getting as much passing game work as we want. That's absolutely fine because he's running the ball well, but it's only equating to about 60 yards a game right now because he's only playing about 55% of the snaps. They know what they are doing. They can be a playoff team in that division. They know they can run the football. They are not going to wear him down in September and October until they need to. In November and December, I've been saying this from the day I drafted him, Jonathan Taylor is going to be a league winner this year. He is going to eat. The Colts have the easiest running back schedule for the rest of the season. It starts this week with Cincinnati, but don't expect a big week out of him this week. It's going to be a probably decent pedestrian week, and that's fine. He's going to get you to the playoffs, and he's going to win you a championship.
I could not be happier with this take, obviously, because I'm invested. But also, I just wanted to throw in, if your narrative is that you think that they're going to save him and use him or only use him when they have to, if Phillip Rivers keeps throwing interceptions, they're going to have to. And so I think that's a huge part of what they're using him. Also, Jordan Wilkins has been banged up a little bit too, so their change of pace guy. And I think if that becomes the thing, like, he's a tank. I think he can take it. But Johnny, speaking of throwing to the running back, this guy lines up in your buy low here because he continues to be the main vein of the running back passing game in Detroit, and that's DeAndre Swift. You have been very adamant in not giving up on your boy Swift just yet. We're only a month into the year, and now you're saying go get him. It's time.
The one thing I was going to add to that is now is the definition there. The Jags give up 6 catches and 42 receptions, or 6 receptions and 42 yards to running backs. He's the pass catcher. That's all going to go to him. And if he adds a touchdown to that, you're not going to get him after that.
He's already top 20 with minimal usage and minimal snaps, as Johnny just said. He's already top 20 as far as receptions at the running back position in the NFL. He's also had 65% of his team's market share for running backs. So this is the guy they want to move the ball with for checkdowns and things of that nature. And I think, they're just off a bye, which means maybe they reassessed. I don't want to project logical coaching with Matt Patricia, but I'm going to try. I think that after week 5, their bye, maybe they looked at things and said, how do we get the ball in our playmakers' hands? And DeAndre Swift is clearly one of their playmakers. All right, moving on to the final section here. We are in our sell high running backs. And Ryan, take it away with a guy who's finally popped a couple weeks, and I think we can finally get rid of him like we've been trying to do since we drafted him. Hopefully you didn't draft him, but if you did, here you go. Todd Gurley.
Yeah, it's funny because with DeAndre Swift, I said sell high. Wait until after Sunday with Gurley because he's probably going to score another touchdown this week. He's doing you a favor with these touchdown scores. It's going to go away. As we've mentioned, Atlanta is a dumpster fire, and dumpster fires are going to hurt running backs more than anything else, especially running backs not being utilized in the passing game. And I don't know why he's not, but he's not. And that's all it really comes down to. He's the RB11, but he has more touchdowns than any back behind him on the list, meaning when we start seeing those running backs who are lagging in touchdowns catch up with him, he's going to plummet in these rankings. And if you haven't moved him, he will be unmovable by the end of the season and probably unplayable by the end of the season.
Yeah, he's only seeing about 50% of the snap share. Brian Hill continues to see work in this offense. So it's not even like he is a true bell cow. And as you said, Ryan, 5 targets is his max, and he's only seen that in 2 games. The other one's not a single target against Dallas, 2 against Chicago, 1 against Green Bay. Not great stuff here. So move on from Todd Gurley if you can. But I like what you said there. Why don't we wait one more week, try and get that touchdown before we do. Your other sell high, and this one I can understand a little bit more. Darrell Henderson here for the Los Angeles Rams. Cam Akers due back. We've heard what Sean McVay said about Cam Akers and this backfield in general, and you think it's time to go ahead and move on from Darrell Henderson.
Yeah, it's going to be musical running backs, and everybody is loving what they're seeing out of Henderson. Anytime you see a Rams highlight, it's probably Henderson. It's going to get worse. He's not seeing the passing game work that Malcolm Brown is, even though he's supposed to be a better pass catcher than Malcolm Brown. He's surprisingly seeing the goal line work lately, which is where Brown excels. And then you have to throw Cam Akers into this. Plus, they're going to start wanting to throw the ball more, even though we don't know if we want Goff throwing the ball more. All 3 of these running backs have over 100 yards. Brown is leading in targets. Akers is going to get involved. The one thing I will definitely say is I am not an advocate, especially this season, of trading any running backs for any wide receivers. There is wide receiver depth every week on waivers or just on your team, probably sitting on your bench. There is not that for running backs. So if I'm moving him, I'm not moving him for a wide receiver. But if you can get an underperforming running back, and I'm going to say a name that you're not going to think is underperforming, but with his injuries, if you can get a Raheem Mostert or if you can get a Kenyon Drake, you might be able to land these guys straight up plus another piece because of what people are seeing out of the fantasy scores from Henderson right now. And that's something that's going to fluctuate. He's going to be a boomer bust running back, which is just awful.
Yeah, and if you're trying to hang your hat on the passing game work, which he's not seeing that much, but this offense is one of the lowest passing offenses in the league. They don't throw the ball a lot. And so I don't know why you would be wanting to hang your hat on an offense that doesn't throw the ball all that much. They want to play to their defense. They want to run play action and run the ball. All right, Johnny, bring us home here with your third and final sell high in this segment. It's a guy that is going to watch Leonard Fournette hopefully get healthy right back into his backfield, Ronald Jones of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, I hope that wasn't the whole thing.
That's a good point. Yep. Ronald Yeah, Ronald Jones actively looks like he's trying not to be a pass catcher. It looks like he is something he's practicing to not do.
I think it's funny that you brought that up, Ryan, because the joke is like you can't catch, right? And he has had his issues not catching. Well, the bigger thing is like 2.8 yards per catch against the Chargers, 6.3 yards per catch against the Bears. Like he's not averaging great depth. He's not getting the ball in stride because he's not used to being a good pass catcher.
Yep.
And I think it's, we got a lot of talk and we got hyped up and we heard Ronald Jones was working on the jugs and working with Brady and he was working on it. It hasn't worked. We're not seeing it translate on the field. And so I would just say that at the very least, with LaShawn McCoy banged up, you're going to see a lot more volume in the passing game for Leonard Fournette. And I love what you brought up about the red zone there, Johnny. So you got me sold on it. I hope Whisper Nation appreciated this. If you've got more questions about who you should buy low or sell high on, please comment below in the comments or hit us up on social media. Ryan, why don't you tell the people where they can find you and some of the stuff you've been working on lately?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find me on Twitter at the Fantasy5, F-I-V-E, 5 is spelled out. I'm a writer for the Fantasy Footballers. I do defense and special teams, the side of the ball nobody wants to talk about, but can help win you a week if you play it right. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm killing my streams over there. So if you're a guy who likes to stream defenses or a girl, check it out. You'll be very happy you did. I also check out snap counts for them. And then for Club Fantasy, I do waiver wire pickups and streams of the week. That's where you'll find my streams of the week. I've always been an advocate of streaming quarterback, tight end, defense, kicker. So we really push that over at Club Fantasy. Every Friday, I drop a top 5 streams for quarterback, tight end, and defense. And for kicker, it doesn't matter. Just grab the best one out there.
Yes, sir. Well, we appreciate you so much, Ryan. I know Whisper Nation is going to love this, and we hope to have you back on the show soon. For Johnny Game Time Hicks, Ryan with Club Fantasy FFL, I'm Big Travy, and we're the Fantasy Whisperers. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Whisperers podcast. You can hear more from John and Travis on Google Play, SoundCloud, and iTunes. You can also follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at TF Whisperers.